Yeah, now the next step, I'll come back to the todos.jsx file. So the next step, we need to go to this list-to-dos component where we are receiving set to do as a prop. So I'll come to list-to-dos.jsx file and we receive set to do as a prop. So right here, set to do. Okay, now we have that, and we also need to pass this set to do as a prop to our to do, because in our to do is where we have a button for updating a to do. So right here, I'll pass set to do as a prop. So set to do will be equal to set to do. Just like that. And now we can come to the to do file and do some state update. First of all, we destructure set to do from here. So set to do. Okay, perfect. And this to do was coming from mapping all our to dos. And yeah, now let's come to this to do file here and make use of set to do. Now at the bottom here where we have our button group, this is where we are having a button for for editing a to do. This create icon button is the one for editing a to do. We will add an on click event and then we'll call a handler function, and we can call this handler function handle update click. Okay, here we'll have an arrow function and handle update click, and we invoke it. Okay, now when we click on this icon or this button, we will call the handle update click. So let's go ahead and create this function at the top here. I'll say const handle update click. It will be an arrow function, and then in here is where we can update the state of our to do. So we can make use of set to do and we invoke it, and what we will pass here is the current to do that we are trying to update, and it is this to do right here. And remember, this to do was coming from our list to do component after we map through all the to dos. So we will get each to do at a time, and when we click on a button for that to do, we will update the state with it. Okay, so this should correctly update the state of our to do, and we can scroll at the top every time we click on that button by using this method. So we have access to the global object called window. So I can say window and then dot scroll to use an object in here, and you can set top to 0 and then left to 0. This is a comma, not a semicolon. And then lastly here, behavior smooth. So we want it to be a smooth scroll. So behavior to be smooth, just like that. Now when we click that button, we will set the state to this and we will scroll to the top. Now the next step is to come to our add to do component and perform a check whether we are creating a new to do or we are updating the to do. Remember, when we update the state of that to do, the value will be taken from that to do right here. Okay, because it's the same state. So and I can see here we had use state and we removed it. So I can remove this use state. Actually I can just cut it and then go to our todos.jsx file, and we need to import it here because this is where we are using use state. Okay, perfect. So what I'm saying, this state is the same for add to do and rest to do. So when we update the state from here, this state is the one that will also be passed to our add to do component. When creating a new to do, this to do will not have an ID, but when we click the update button, this to do will be coming from the database and it will be having an ID, and that ID was auto-generated by MongoDB. So that is what we are going to use to differentiate between whether we are creating a new to do or we are trying to update a to do. So let's come to our add to do component, and where we are submitting the to do, we will perform a check and then perform a dispatch depending on whether we are adding a new to do or we are updating a to do. So right here I can just say if to do dot underscore ID exists. If it exists, it means that we are updating our to do. If it does not exist, it means that we are trying to create a new to do which does not have an ID yet. Okay, so we'll do something in here. So in here is where we can perform a dispatch of updating the to do. Else we will dispatching this to do right here. Okay, so you can see the difference. Now we need to import our action creator for updating a to do, and the action creator was update to do, and they are coming from the same file. So just use a comma and then update to do, and right here we can reassign to do.id to be simply id. So I can say const id will be equal to do dot underscore id, and then we can define the properties of our updated to do. So right here we can say updated to do. Actually I can just say const updated to do will be equal to, we set the properties of our updated to do, and an updated to do should have all the properties that we included on the backend so that it does not throw an error. Remember, updating a to do means that we are replacing the entire to do, specifically when we use the put method, okay, instead of patch. So I can set the name to be to do.name, and then is complete will be to do dot is complete. Date will be to do dot date, and then author, in this case we can manually set the author to be a string because we don't have an author yet. I can set it to Chao, and later on we can also add a UID when we add authentication in our system, but for now this will do. And you might be asking yourself, why can't we just pass this to do right here? Now this to do have a property called version, and in our backend we did not include a version property that was automatically added by MongoDB, and that version might throw some errors. So that's why I did this, and yeah, it will work when we do this. When we pass it directly, it will throw an error. Now the only thing that remains is to just dispatch our updated to do using the dispatch right here. So right here I can just say dispatch. We can just say dispatch. We invoke it update to do, and in here we pass updated to do, updated our to do, and also we pass the ID of our to do, which is this one here, ID. Okay, so our action creator will receive the updated to do and the ID, and then we will correctly update the to do. And when I come back to add to do.js, .jsx, I also want us to change some things, and it is right here, the date. So when we are updating a to do, I don't want us to set a new date. I want us to reuse the old date. But when adding a new to do, I want us to set a new date. So what I'll do, I'll just cut this just like that, and I'll update the date right here when adding a new to do. Okay, so right here I can just say const new to do will be equal to, I spread the properties of our to do, and then I use a comma and I set the date. Okay, sorry, I use a comma and I set a date to be new date. Now with this implementation, this date will be the old date of our to do. Maybe you can add a date for when the to do was updated, but for now this works. And then this one is the date of adding a new to do. And the way we are differentiating whether we are adding a new to do or we are updating the to do is by using the ID. Okay, remember when you click the edit icon, okay, we will populate our form with the existing to do, and that existing to do will have an ID, and then we can check if the ID exists. If it exists, we know we are updating the to do, and we'll perform a dispatch of this action creator. Else it means that we are creating a new to do and we haven't gotten an ID yet, because that to do does not exist in the database. So we create a constant here called new to do. We pass the data of the to do, and this is the new to do, so it means that it will only have the name. Okay, so it will only have the name and is complete, which was the default. So we will have that, and then we'll add a date, and then when we send it to the backend, an ID will be automatically assigned to it. And then right here we dispatch the to do, and we have renamed this one to new to do, so we need to also rename this to new to do. And in our to do actions, I'll come at the top and rename this one to new to do. But if you left it as to do, it would also work, but for consistency we can rename it to new to do, and we add the new to do to the database just like that. Now one more thing that we might have messed up is in our to do reducer. So this was correct, the implementation here is correct, but we should directly return this without these curly brackets, otherwise it will throw an error. Okay, so remove that and we should have something like this. We are directly returning this line, and that's it. At this point I am hoping this should work. It should correctly update our to do. So I'll run my development server and test this application on our browser. Now our application have loaded. When we hit one of these buttons, we should populate this form with our to do. So let's try this one. I hit it, and perfect, we are populating the data with this to do, and the data here now will have an ID. And when we try to submit this, what will happen is that we will check if there is an ID, and then we will dispatch the appropriate action creator. So let's try to perform an update, maybe old to do, submit, and you can see that the data here changed to old to do. So perfect, we are perfectly updating our to-do with this implementation. So when I click this one, you can see another one, and maybe we can change to something like learn Redux. I submit, and this should update to learn Redux. So we are perfectly updating our to-do. Now that's it. That's how we can update the to-do. I hope everything was clear, and I'll see you on the next section, where maybe we can move from the logic section and try to add the React Toastify, so that we can see messages of actions we perform in our application. And then after that, we will quickly perform marking to do as done and also deleting a to do. In this section, I want us to do something fun, which is adding some toast messages in our application. So all you need to do is to come to your terminal, and then you run this command npm I react toastify, and this will install React Toastify in your application. You can see I have already done that, and I'm using version 7.0.3. Now let's make use of this library. The first thing that you'll need to do is to go to app.js, and at the very top we will import a component from React Toastify called toast container. So just right here I will say import toast container, and this is from React Toastify. Another thing that we need to import is the React Toastify CSS file, and this is how we import it. You will say import, you use these quotes, and then React Toastify stroke dist stroke React Toastify .css. Now let's load this component just right here after our browse router. So right here you'll say toast container, just like that. Okay, and then now we can make use of a toast object to display different messages in our application. So what we need to do is to jump to do actions.js, and in addition to logging a message to the console, we will also toast an error message. So right here we will toast an error message, but before we do that we need to import the toast object from React Toastify. So let's go at the very top and import it. So I'll import a destructor toast from React Toastify, and then now we can make use of this toast. And I want us to toast error messages for add to do and also for update to do when a user performs an action. So for add to do, when we log the message to the console, we can also toast an error. So we'll say toast dot error, and then the error message will be available in error object dot response. And then we have another property called data. Okay, and with this we will get the error message which we customarily added on our backend. But sometimes this response may not always be there, and it may take some time to process. Now to safely load this error message, we can use something we called an optional chaining operator. So right here we will include a question mark and then a dot data. Now when the response is available in our error message, we will safely load the message, else this will be just undefined and no errors will be thrown. Okay, and this is called optional chaining. You can read more on it. And also we can change the default position of this error message. So right here I can include an object, and then I set a property called position and a full colon. We say toast dot position and then dot bottom. You can see the different options that are there: bottom center, bottom left. What I want is bottom right. So yeah, this is it. So I can just copy this and paste it right here. It's just the same thing, but it will load different error messages. Now this is in case of errors. In case of a successful operation, we'll go to our reducers. So to do reducers or to do reducer, and we will toast a message here. So first of all, we need to import the toast. So I'll come to the to do actions again and copy this line, and then in our reducers I'll paste it at the very top. Now for our add to do, we can say toast dot success, and then we can enter a custom message, and all we will say is a to do was added. And I can include 3 dots, and then we can position this at the bottom right. So position full colon toast dot position and then dot bottom right. And now if we successfully add a to do, this message will be shown. So I can copy this and paste it on our update to do, and the message will be now a to do was updated. Okay, now we can test our application and see if these toast messages will appear. Okay, now I'll go back to the browser, and I'm hoping that it have refreshed. Let's try to add a new to do, maybe learn CSS, submit, and perfect. A to do was added, a green toast message, and you can see learn CSS here. Let's try to edit. Maybe we wanted to say learn JS, submit, it's updated, a to do was updated. Let's invoke an error. When we enter like 2 characters, this won't go through because on our backend we had set a minimum of 3, so we should get an error. Submit and name, length must be at least 3 characters long. So you can see we are getting this message from the backend. Now in this section I want us to mark a to do as done or not done, or checking a to do. But before we do that, if you want to avoid these outputs, you can come to list to do's component and remove this console.log message. Okay, and that should do it. And to mark a to do as done, we need an action creator for that. So I'll come to do actions.js, and I'll scroll at the bottom here. I'll just copy the whole of this action creator and paste it at the bottom, and then we'll customize it to fit our needs. So this we can call it check to do, and all we will have is an ID of the to do that we are trying to mark as done or not done or to toggle, and then we'll return a dispatch and we'll use Axios. This time the method is patch, and this will be our endpoint together with the ID, but we won't be sending any to do to the backend. We will simply send an empty object, but we won't be using it on the backend. We will be using the ID to access the to do from the backend, and then updating the is complete property by doing a toggle. And then right here we'll tap a then method, and we will get a to do that have already been updated, and the only thing that will be updated is that is complete property. And then we will dispatch a type of maybe check to do, and then we will also pass this to do together with the type. Okay, and we can use these two properties to correctly update the state, and this will remain as it is to display the error. Now let's go to the reducer, which is right here, and how we will perform an update for that check to do is the same way that we did for this case. Okay, so all I'll do, I'll copy the entire of this case and duplicate it at the bottom here. I'll use Alt Shift and the bottom arrow, and then right here I'll just change the case to check to do, and then we can send a message here of a to do status was changed. And then the position of our toast will be there, and this will remain as it is. Now the only thing that remains is to dispatch our action creator from our UI, and we'll do this in our to-do.jsx file. So when we click the check circle button, we will call a helper function which will dispatch our action creator. So I'll come right here, and this is where we performed a check, and I want to change something so that we can easily do this. Okay, instead of adding on click event on two buttons, we can remove this button. We can also remove this one, and then I can take this at the very top before our check here, and I can take this at the bottom after our check. And if I save this, it will be properly auto formatted, so you can see what is happening. We only have one button, but the icon is the one that will be conditionally be rendered, and now we can only add one on click event on this one button. So right here I can say on click, which will be equal to, I use this curly brackets, an arrow function, and we can call our helper method handle check, and we should pass the ID of the to do that we are trying to check. So I can say to do dot underscore ID, and now we can create this function real quick at the top here. So right here I'll say const handle check, and this will be an arrow function, and right here we will receive the ID, and then in here is where we dispatch our action creator. So we don't have dispatch imported in this file, So we need to import use dispatch hook from React Redux. And then I can make use of use dispatch right here, which will be equal to use dispatch. We invoke that and we dispatch our action creator right here. Actually, we should also import our action creator. I'll just import it at the bottom here, which is check to do, and this will come from our store stroke actions stroke to do actions, just like that. Now we can dispatch it, and I invoke it. So now when we click this button, we will call, where is it, this one. When we click this button, we will call handle check. We'll pass the ID of that to do, and we are receiving that ID here. We can rename it to be just ID. We dispatch the check to do action creator, and we should also pass that ID right here, so that in our action creator we will receive that ID and properly update our to do. Okay, and it will only update that one property of is complete. So at this point we can test our application and see if everything works. So I'll come back here and maybe do a manual refresh. Let's try to mark learn.js as done. So I'll click check, and a to do status was changed, but you can see this icon did not change. Okay, so if I mark this as done, a to do status changed, but this icon did not change. What about if I refresh? So you can see that they were actually updated at the backend, but our state is not properly being updated. So I have taken a look as to why our UI is not updating correctly whenever we press this check icon. Okay, so when I check, the to do will actually update, but our UI is not updating correctly until we refresh, and that is a bad user experience. So I have checked at my front-end code right here, and everything is fine. There is no issue with the front-end code. The reason why it is not updating correctly is because what we are getting here from the backend is still our old to do instead of the updated to do. So in our to do reducer, when we try to update the state here, we are updating the state with the old to do instead of the new to do. So the issue is on our backend. So you can open the backend code and then go to todos.js, and at our router.patch, this is where we were marking a to do as done. Let me expand this because it's looking weird. Yeah, perfect. So this is where we were marking a to do as done. We were taking the ID and getting that to do from the database. So this is the to do, and then we performed an if statement. If the to do does not exist, we return this message to the client, else we update the to do using these lines of code. So we await to do dot find by id and update. We use the id, which is request.params.id, this one which we pass in our URL, and then we change the is complete, okay, by negating this one. So if to do dot is complete is false, we change it to true, else we change it to false, okay. But what we are missing is that we miss this kind of a flag, new to true, and this flag will enable us to return the updated to do instead of the old to do. So this will be the old to do instead of the updated to do. For this to be the updated to do, we need to pass a new flag just like this one. So we will include a comma here and then paste that flag, okay. And this flag we included it here when we were editing a to-do. So this is our put request endpoint. And if you don't know how we did all this, go back to this series and watch some of my previous videos in this series so that you can get to understand how we created these endpoints, and this should fix it, okay. So if I check my server here, it's restarting, and I think I can cross this one because I'm not using it. So once this one starts, we can test our front end right here. So now I will refresh this one so that we can get our application state correctly. And now let's try to mark this as done. We should correctly update our state. I mark it as done, and there we go. Now it's going through. I mark this one as not done, and there we go. So now everything is working for marking a to-do as done. In the next section, we are going to delete a to-do. So in this section, we are going to try and delete a to-do, and the first thing that we are going to do is to create an action creator. So I'll open the to-do action creator, and what I'll do is that I'll copy the whole of this code and paste it at the bottom here. We change the name of check to do to delete, and here we will receive the ID of the to do that we want to delete. We return a function. We use axios.delete method, and right here we'll only pass the URL. We don't need this empty object, so I'll remove that. And then right here we will just dispatch an action of type delete, okay. So we don't need to pass any to do here, so I'll just dispatch an action of type delete, and then I'll pass this ID of that to do right here, and then we catch the error, okay. And this is the action creator for deleting a to do. Now let's go to our to do reducer and update the state. So right here I'll copy this code for checking a to do and paste it at the bottom. I will save so that we can correctly auto format it, and change the name of the case here to delete to do. Right here we will toast a message, a to do was deleted. And then for updating our state, we will use an array method called filter, okay. So right here, instead of using map, we will use filter dot filter, and then right here we will filter our to-dos and exclude the to-do that we just deleted. And how we'll do that is by doing this to-do._id, and this is the to-do that is available in our array of our to-dos right here. This is the state of our to-dos, and it's an array of those to-dos. So we'll get the to-do from the array and we'll exclude a to-do that we just deleted. So right here I'll say if to-do.id is not equal to action.id, just like this, and I remove this part just like this. So what this code will do is that it will exclude the to-do._id that matches action.id. Okay, it will return all those to-dos that does not match with this particular id, and this action.id is the one that we have included in our action creator here. So action.id, and this code should correctly update our state. So for now, we need to figure out a way of dispatching our delete to do, and we'll do that on the UI where we have an icon for deleting a to do. So right here, first of all, we will import the delete action creator right here, which is delete to do, and then at the bottom here where we have our delete icon, we will add an on-click event which will be equal to an arrow function, and right here we can call handle a delete helper function. We currently don't have this function, so we can create it here. Actually, I'll just duplicate this. So this function will be handle delete, and then it will receive an ID. So we need to pass the ID of the to-do that we are trying to delete here, like we did in handle check. To-do._id, and then at the top we dispatch the delete action creator, just like that, and then we pass the ID. So that ID will be received right here. We will perform an axios.delete, and then this is the endpoint where we pass also the ID, and then we'll dispatch an action of type delete, and we pass the ID here. And when we come to our reducers, we will use the filter method to exclude that to do in our state, so that we only have those to dos that are not deleted. Now, yeah, that's it. Now we can test this application. So let's try to delete a to do, this one. A to do was deleted and it's gone, it's not here. Let's try to delete old to do. It's gone, it's gone, it's gone, and our delete functionality is working. We can confirm this by going to our database. Now we should not have any to dos. So I'll come here and hit refresh, or at the top. And the query result is 0. We don't have any to dos in our database. And I guess now we have achieved the goal of this whole video, which was about CRUD operations. We can create a new to do. We can update this new to do using this icon. we can mark a to-do as done, and also we can delete a to-do. Now in the next video is when we will handle authentication. So we'll see how we can sign in a user, sign up a user, sign out a user, and also perform other functionalities in our application. So thank you for watching. If you like the video, please leave a thumbs up and remember to subscribe. Hey, what's up guys? So in this video we are going to perform authentication in React and Redux. So we'll have a form where we can sign up new users, and then we'll have another form where we can log in registered users, and once you are logged in you can be able to sign out from the application. We will also be making use of JWT, which stands for JSON Web Tokens, and local storage for persistency. So we'll be able to get a token from the server and then store it at the local storage and the application state in order to know the currently logged in user. And then we'll be able to perform conditional rendering depending on whether a user is logged in or not. Now, in case you are not aware, this video is a continuation of the ongoing Manstack series in my YouTube channel. So I leave a link at the description section below to this particular series or playlist, so that you can see how we created our backend using Express, MongoDB, and also Node.js. So we were able to create all the CRUD operation API endpoints and also the auth API endpoints in this particular video. We also created the UI using React, React Router, Material UI, and we were able to perform CRUD operations using React and Redux hooks. So right here I have the live version of the application where you can go to the sign up form and also the sign in form and sign in a new user, and I'll also leave a link at the description section below to this live version of the application so that you can test it out. Okay, in case you're new here, my name is Charles. I am a JavaScript developer, a coffee lover, and I create coding content here on YouTube. Now that sounds awesome, so please make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss any of my future videos. So in case you want to reach out to me, you can do so through my Twitter, which is @ChowCharles, or you can leave a comment at the comment section below. Now to start with, we are going to create an action creator for handling sign up. Okay, remember we are using Redux, and right here we had our to do actions up to where we reached, and we were able to perform all the CRUD operations. But in this video I want us to move on to authentication. So from our actions, I'll be creating a new action creator for signing in the users and also registering the users and performing all those auth operations. So I'm going to say auth actions.js, and I'm going to come to the to do actions and copy this first portion of the to do actions up to this get to do action creator. I will copy that and then go to the auth actions and I'll paste everything in here. So we will need to make use of Axios to perform HTTP request. We'll make use of this URL, which is coming from the API folder right here. If I click this index.js, you'll see that the URL is simply our server endpoint, which is localhost 5000/API. So I'm grabbing this and then coming to the auth actions and importing it here. We'll make use of React Toastify for toast messages, and then we need to customize this action creator to fit our needs. So the first thing that we can do is to rename it to sign up. So right here I'll say sign up, and then with the help of Redux Dunk we'll be able to return a function in here and be able to perform a HTTP request or a network request. We'll have access to dispatch for continuing the dispatch of our action, and then we'll use axios.post. Okay, so this time we are using the axios.post because we are creating a new resource to the database, which is a new user. So right here we'll say axios.post, and then the URL here will be the URL, which is this one here, http localhost 5000/API, and then we will add something on the front end so that to hit our auth API endpoint for signing up the users. So instead of stroke to dos, we will say stroke sign up. And right here we will be getting in a user when we dispatch this action creator from our sign up form. So right here I'll get in a user, and then we can store this user now to the backend. So right here when I say user, this user will be received by our API endpoint and the user will be saved in the database. And then once the user is saved, we will be automatically get logged in to the system by getting back a JWT token. So what we get back from this post request is a token, which is a JWT token. So right here I'll say token, and then we can dispatch an action here, and the dispatch here will be sign up. So sign up, and now we can access this sign up from our reducers and update the state accordingly. But right here we also need to dispatch the token itself. So right here I'll say token, and I'll use a full colon because the token will be actually available in token.data. So right here I'll say token.data, and that token will be stored in this particular property called token. Okay, in case there is an error, we'll be able to catch that error and log it to the console, and also we can toast it right here. So I can use React Toastify. I'll say toast dot error, and I'll say error dot response dot data. So right here I'll use this question mark in case we don't have the response. There will be no error that will be thrown. Okay, so this is a safe way of loading the data from our error. Okay, and then we can position our toast right here. I'll say position a full colon, I'll say toast dot position, which is this one, and then dot bottom right. We have a suggestion there. So yeah, this is it. But for persistency, I want us to also save this token which we are getting from the backend to the local storage. Okay, so in JavaScript we have access to an object called local storage. So just after this one, before we dispatch the action, we will say local storage, and we have a method called set item, just like that. And then when I invoke this method, the first parameter here will be the property of whatever we want to store at our local storage. So the key and value pair is what is happening here. So right here we'll have a token which is our key, and then the value will be token dot data, just like we did here. Okay, the token string is available in token.data. So right here we pass token.data, and now when we successfully get a token, this token will be stored at our local storage. And this is an action creator now for signing up a user. Okay, this is all we need to do. The next thing we need to do is to dispatch this action creator from our sign up form. So what I'll do, I'll go to the sign up form. In our components, I expand auth and then go to sign up. So for the sign up form, we need to make use of state and also our action creator for us to successfully get the values here and send them to the backend. So to start with, I'll import use state from React right here. So I'll say use state, and this is not uses, it's use. And then after we declare our component here, inside here we'll make use of the use state. So I'll say const we destructure user from the use state here, and then set user, and this is the method that we'll use to update our state here, and we set it to use state. I invoke this, and in here I can pass default values for our user state. Okay, so we expect a user to have a name, so I can default that to an empty string. We also expect a user to have an email, and I'll default that to an empty string. And also we expect the user to have a password, and I'll default this to also an empty string. Okay, now I can come to each of these fields and update each of these values depending on the field. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is that I'll set a value, a prop here. So I'll say value will be equal to, I use these curly brackets and access the name, so it will be user.name right here, user.name. And then now we can update the name using onChange event. So right here I'll say onChange will be equal to, I use these curly brackets, we get an event here, and then I make use of set user. I invoke this, I spread the values of the already existing user, which are these values here. So in here I'll spread the values for the user, but we want to update the name, the name field. So right here I'll set the name to be e.target.value. Yeah, I guess that's correct. Okay, when you type on this particular field, we will update the name to be equal to that particular value that you type in. Okay, so we will do a similar thing for these other fields, and I like copy pasting to make my work easier. I'll copy that, paste it here, change this to user.email, and then we use the set user. We spread the properties, but the thing that we are changing here is the email property. I go to the password. After this I paste this one, and then I use the user.password, and then I update the password right here, just like that. So all our fields are set. Now I need to create a helper method which will be called whenever we submit this form. Okay, so right here I'll have an onSubmit event. So onSubmit, and we will call a helper method, and we can call it handle submit, just like that. We haven't created this method yet, so let's come at the top here and create the method. Just before our return statement, I'll say const handle submit, which will be equal to, it will accept an event, and this is an arrow function, just like that. And the first thing that we will do is to prevent the default action of submitting a form. So right here I'll say e.prevent default. So this will prevent the browser from refreshing. or the page from refreshing, and I invoke that. And then after this is where we can perform a dispatch of our action creator. So to dispatch an action creator, we will need to make use of some Redux hooks, and the specific Redux hook is the use dispatch hook. So right here we can import use dispatch, and this will be coming from React Redux. So I import use dispatch, and also I import the use selector hook. So we'll use this use selector hook later on when we want to select some piece of state from our Redux store. So use selector, and all this will be coming from React Redux. React-Redux, and I forgot a from here and the spelling for this one. I guess that is right. Okay, so this is what I am interested in, the use dispatch hook. Okay, and it's coming from React Redux. So I'll come just after our classes here, and I'll set a constant called dispatch, and I'll initialize the use dispatch hook. Dispatch, I invoke it just like that. Okay, now we can make use of this dispatch inside our handle submit helper method. So right here I'll say dispatch, I invoke this, and we should now dispatch our action creator just right here. Okay, but we need to import that action creator from our auth actions. So right here, let's import our action creator. I'll say import the sign up action creator, and I need to wrap this inside the curly brackets because these are named export. So if I come to the auth actions here, you can see export const sign up. So it's a named export, and we should use these curly brackets to destructure it. Okay, I'm lost. We are here. So all this will come from our action creator, which is very far. We need to get out of the components folder so that we go to the store. So I'll use this app, one directory, another directory. We go to the store, and then we go to actions, and then right here we should get a suggestion for auth actions. If we don't get, something is wrong. Yeah, auth actions, that's perfect. And then now we can dispatch this action creator in here where we are performing a dispatch. So I'll say dispatch sign up, I invoke it, and it expects a user. So right here I'll simply pass the user, which is this user, and once we type at our fields, this set user will correctly update the properties of our user. So when we perform a dispatch, when we click the submit button, this function will be called, sign up action creator will be dispatched, and then it will receive that user right here, and then we'll use adjust.post, and then tap the endpoint right here and pass the user to the body of the request so that our backend can save that user to the database. Once we successfully save the user, we then sign in from the backend using JWT, and what we get back is a token, and then we save this token to the local storage, and this will help to have persistency for authentication in our application. And then after that, we continue the dispatch by dispatching an action of sign up and then the token, and we can access this now at our reducers and correctly update the state. Okay, but before we go to our reducers, I want to come back to the sign up form. Once we perform a dispatch, I want us to reset the form values, by changing the state to the default state, and this will affect each value right here. Okay, so if we set the name to an empty string, the value will be empty. So right here I'll make use of set user, and I invoke that and pass these values in here. So I'll just copy them and paste them in here. This will just reset our form. So I will save this, and Prettier will correctly format my code. I guess this is okay for this form at the moment, and all we need to do now is to update our state using the auth reducer. So in our reducers we have root reducer and to do reducer, so we can add a new file for auth reducer. So right here I'll say auth reducer, just like that, but .js, and then this auth reducer is supposed to be just a function. So right here we will import toast from React toast file for our toast messages, just like that, and then we will import JWT decode. So this is something that you'll need to install. So if I come right here, I had already installed it, and let me see. Yeah, I am at my front end and I perform this action npm I JWT decode, and this JWT decode will help us to decode our JSON web token, which we are getting from the backend. Okay, so please install this, and then we need to import JWT decode right here. So I'll say import JWT decode, and this is from that package which I am assuming you have now installed, JWT-decode, just like that. And I think I made a mess. Did I install this package correctly? Yeah, it's JWT-decode. Okay, it should be that way. Now you can import JWT decode from JWT decode. Now right here we should have a function which is our auth reducer. So I'll say const auth reducer will be equal to, it have access to the state, and the state we can set the state to have an initial value. So this one will be equal to, let's call it initial state, and we'll also have access to action, and then this will be an arrow function, so we pass it just like that. And we don't have this initial state at the moment, and I misspelled it. Initial, I think it's written that way now. So let's set this initial state, which will be an object for our default state. So right here I'll come and set a constant, call it initial state, and then I'll set to be equal to an object. So for our state, our auth state, we expect to have a token, and we'll get this token right here from our local storage. So remember right here we saved a token at the local storage, and now we can access that token from the local storage and store it in our state by default. So this will have some persistency whenever we refresh the page, or whenever we come back later and try to access our application, we'll already have a token at the local storage, and we can get that token and set it to our state. Okay, so right here I'll use the local storage object and then access the get item method, and now right here we only need to pass the key for that item. Okay, and we set a key of token. So if I come to auth actions, we set a key of token, which will be equal to this token.data. So this is the token, and then we will have the name. I'll set this one to null, we'll have an email. I'll also set this one to null, and we will have an ID. So I'll say underscore ID, and this will be the user ID. Okay, I'll also set it to null. Now this is the initial state. Okay, this is the initial state for our application, and we are setting it to be the default state right here, state to be equal to the initial state, and then we have access to action. Now we can switch through the different action types and update the state accordingly right here. So right here I'll say switch action dot type, and then in here is where we can go through each case, and the case I am interested in right now is the sign up case. So sign up, and that case is the one that we dispatched right here. Yeah, I am a copy paster. I'll come here and paste that right here. So this should be the same as that action that we dispatched from all actions. So for the case sign up, I will use a full colon, and then we will toast a welcome message. So right here we can say toast, and we can enter a message here, welcome. And then I can position this to be at the bottom right. So position toast dot position. It should give me a suggestion, but it's not. Okay, bottom right. But we also want to include our user to the auth state. So what I can do at the bottom here, I'll now make use of JWT decode. Okay, and I'll say const user will be equal to JWT decode, and then I'll pass the token, which is action dot token. Okay, so this action dot token is the one that we passed right here, action dot token, which is equal to our token. And once we decode that token, we will get a user, and I'll show you how this is working on the JWT website so that you can correctly understand it. But the user will have these properties: name, email, ID, and whatever property we included at our backend. Okay, and now that we have that, we can update our state like this. So we can return an object. We spread the initial state, which is this one right here. We spread the initial state, comma, and then we can update each of these properties. Okay, so let's start with the token. So the token here, we will update it to the token that we are getting from the backend. So we'll say action dot token, and then we update the name, which will be user dot name. We update the email, which will be user dot email, and also we update the ID, which will be user dot underscore ID. Just like that. So if I save this, I think Preacher should format the code, and this is more readable now. So let me take you through what is going on. Once we submit this action, sign up, our auth reducer will check for case sign up, and then we toast a welcome message. We decode the token, action.token, and get back a user with these properties: name, email, and ID. And then we can update our state from the initial state here to this particular state, where we can now have these properties in our auth state. Okay, and then after this we should also perform a default case right here. We can say default a full colon, we simply return the state, return state. Now we need to export this auth reducer right here. So I'll say export default and then auth reducer. And once we export it, we need to use it in our root reducer so that our application is aware of it. So I'll come to the root reducer and import our auth reducer. I'll just duplicate this one using Alt Shift and the bottom arrow, and then I'll import auth from auth reducer. And then right here we will add auth to the state. So I'll use a comma and then auth, and right here I'll say auth reducer. So our auth here will contain the state of our auth reducer, which is this one now, token, name, email, and ID, and we'll be able to access this state from any other component in our application, because now this one is in Redux store. Okay, so yeah, that's it. That is how we can perform sign up, and the only thing that remains is to test our application and see whether we'll get a token and add it to the state and also to the local storage. So I'll come back here and start my application using npm start, and this might take a while, so npm start. And then another thing that I want you to have on is the server should be also running. So whenever you have your backend, run your server using nodemon. Okay, because we need to access the server using this API right here, index.js. You need to access the server on localhost. Okay, so make sure your server is also running. So the app failed to compile, and it's because we have two errors. One is in our auth actions and the other one in our auth reducer. So to fix this error, we can go back to the code editor, and the error is because of our toast.error method here. The first parameter should be our response or our error message, and then the second parameter is our option for positioning the toast message. So I should cut the entire of this section and include it inside our error method brackets. So I'll create a space and paste everything right here. So this is what we have. This is the first parameter and this is the second parameter. I'll save that, and then the second error is in our auth reducer. So right here, instead of user, I wrote use, so I should change this one to user, and that should fix the second error. Also, I would like to log the state to the console so that we can see whether we will get the user at our state. So I'll go to the sign up form, and I'll make use of this Redux hook which we had imported earlier called use selector. So just after dispatch, I'll say const state will be equal to use selector. I invoke this. What we get right here is the state, and we can return this state so that it is stored in our constant here. So state and then an arrow function, and we return the state. So now we can log this state to the console. Right here I'll say console.log state. So let's test our application. I'll come back to the browser and refresh this page. So now our application is running, and when I open the console right here, I can come to these arrows and then go to application here, and you'll see we have a section called storage, and we can see whatever is stored in our local storage. So at the moment we don't have anything stored at our local storage, it's empty. But because we used our local storage in our application, once we sign up, a token should be added right here. And when I look at my MongoDB database, you'll see at our users we currently don't have any user. So let's test the application. I'll enter a name, an email, and also a password, and then click sign up, and you'll see we get this message, welcome message, which we included in our reducers, and then a token is added right here. So if we copy this token and go to JSON Web Tokens website, we can be able to decode that token at the bottom here. We just replace the entire of this token with what we have, okay? And when I paste it here, you can see at our payload we have the decoded token, and so we have a user ID, a name, an email, and when the token was created. And this is what our JWT decode is doing at our auth reducer. So this JWT decode, we call it and pass the auth token right here, and we get back a user. So this user will have an ID, a name, and also an email. So this is what was happening with our JWT decode, and we can be able to add the user now to our application state. So we had logged the state to the console. So if I come to the console right here, you can see we have some log messages. All these log messages were happening when we enter a value in our form, because each time we enter a value, the application state changes. But when we expand this and then expand auth, so we have two parameters in our state, auth and to-dos. So if I expand auth, you'll see that we have an email, we have a name, and also we have an ID and a token. So we are successfully signing up a user, and we are also signing them in by receiving a token. And when we go to our MongoDB database and refresh this section, we should see that a user was added in our database. So let's see, and there we go. This is the same user that we just added using our sign up form, and you can also see that our password is being hashed, and this is happening from our backend. Okay, so we would like when a user successfully signs up and gets signed in the application, we redirect them to our to-dos right here. So to do that, I'll go back to the sign up form and I'll import something from React Router DOM, which is our redirect component. Right here, I'll import redirect from React Router DOM. And then we can make use of it just before our return statement, and we will perform a check if auth._id exists. Then we want to redirect the user to the home page. So right here we will say return the redirect component, and we include the to plop, which will be equal to a path, which is our home page. So if a user is logged in or signed up, we will have an ID at our state, and if we have an ID, it means that the user is logged in, and therefore we will redirect the user to the home page instead of showing them the sign up form. So right now we haven't defined auth, and we should get auth from the state. So instead of returning the entire state here, we can say state.auth and store that in a constant. So auth, and then I can get rid of console.log. So right now when we sign up a user and we are automatically logged in, we should be redirected to the home page. Okay, and we can test the application. So the application has loaded, but when I try to go to sign up, I'm getting an error, failed plop, where the plop2 is marked as required in redirect, but the value was undefined. And the issue is right here. I don't know how this was added, but this should not be here. So make sure this is empty, and also at the bottom we don't have that redirect. The redirect should only be here, and we pass the plop2 and the path. So now when I refresh this one, we can go to sign up and test whether we will be redirected to our home page. So I'll sign up for a new account. I'll enter a dummy email, and then create a password and sign up. So welcome, and we are redirected to our home page. Okay, when we try to visit sign up right now, you'll notice that we can't go to sign up because we already have a user in our state, and also we have a token at our local storage. But when I refresh the page, the auth state will be lost, and we can be able to visit the sign up page. So we added the token at the local storage so that we can add some persistency in our application in terms of authentication, so that even if we refresh, as long as we have a token at our local storage, we'll still be logged in if we have that token right here. Okay, so to add that persistency, we'll need to make use of this token by loading the user, and that is what we are going to cover in the next section. So right now we have successfully signed up a user, and we are also automatically logging them in. In this section, I want us to load a user from the local storage and include them in the application state. So if I come to the auth reducer, you'll see that we are already loading a token from the local storage, and this token we had added earlier using our sign up. So right here we set a token, and then we can load that token from our local storage. So once we sign up, this token will be persistent even if we refresh the page. So this token remains at the local storage, and we can make use of it in this particular video, where we will take it from the application state and then dispatch an action of load user, and then we can decode that action in our auth reducer using JWT decode and include the user, that is the name, the email, and the ID in the application state. So I'll come back to the auth actions, and I'll create a new action creator called load user. So I'll say export const load user, and this will be an arrow function. Right here, with the help of Redux Dunk, we can return a function. So I return a function, and we will have access to dispatch for dispatching our actions. and also we will have access to get state, and we can get the application state from the Redux store. Now right here I'll get the token, so I'll say const token will be equal to get state. I invoke it, and then we access the auth state, and the property that we want from our auth state is our token. So now this token is coming from our state, and it was added to our state through our local storage.get item. So we added here the token to our state, and we can get it from our state just like this. Okay, now we can make use of this token by dispatching it so that we can use it in our auth reducer. So right here I'll perform a check if token exists. If token is not null, then we will perform a dispatch, and I misspelled this one. I invoke this, pass an object, and then the action will be type of user loaded, user underscore loaded, and then the payload will be our token. So this is an if statement. We need to also include an else. Else will simply return null. Now we have an action creator for loading our user, and we are getting this token from the state, and it was added to our state using this particular method right here. So local storage.get item token, and we add it to the state, and now we can perform a case of user loaded. So I'll simply copy this user loaded, and then the case will be similar to our sign up here. So all I can do is say case user loaded, and then I include a full colon. So if this action is dispatched, our auth reducer will perform a check, and it will see that we have user loaded, and therefore it will perform this action. First of all, it will toast a welcome message, and then it will decode the user from action.token. So remember, we are passing that token right here. So it's action.token, and then once it decodes that token, it will get those user properties. So we will have a name from user.name, email from user.email, and an underscore ID from user._ID. And when we perform a check whether an auth._ID exists in our application, will notice that the user have been loaded, and they will log the user in. So all remains is to dispatch this action creator from our front end. So how we are going to do that is in our app.js file. Now in our app.js, we'll make use of the use effect hook. So we can get it from React right here. And then we'll also need to make use of use dispatch. So we can import it from React Redux. And the last thing that we will need in order to dispatch that action creator is the actual action creator. So I can import the action creator just right here. I'll say import load user, and this will be from our auth actions. So I'll go inside the store because they are at the same level, and then actions, and then we go to the auth actions, just like that. And now we can come to our app. I'll create a constant called dispatch, and we will load our use dispatch hook. I invoke that, and then just below here we can make use of our use effect hook. Now this use effect hook will be loaded after our application renders, okay? And once it renders, we dispatch our load user action creator, and then our load user action creator will get the token from the state and will dispatch an action of user loaded, and then our auth reducer will perform this check. It will see user loaded, and it will decode the token and add these properties to our application state. So let's make use of use effect in our app.js. So I'll say use effect. I invoke it and pass a function in here. So this is an arrow function, and then in here is where we can perform a dispatch. I invoke it and we dispatch our load user action creator. We also need to pass our dependency array here, so I'll use a comma and then I'll pass dispatch in here. So every time we have a dispatch, this use effect will be called, okay? So yeah, that's it, and now we can test our application. So I'll come right here and start my front end, and also make sure that your backend is also running, okay? So backend nodemon, and it's running on port 5000. Now our application has loaded, and you can see we already have a token at our local storage. So if I try to go to sign up, I can't, because we are already logged in our auth state. We have an auth ID, and if I try to refresh this, you'll see now that we have some persistency with authentication. As long as there is a token in our local storage, we are automatically signed in, okay? So now the only way of logging out the user is by deleting this token from the local storage, and that is what we will do later with our sign out button. We'll be simply deleting this token. So if I clear this token and try to refresh this page, now you'll see that we can visit our sign up component, not unless now we sign up the user again and they are automatically logged in and we have a token in our local storage. So now we are successfully loading a user, and in the next section we'll see how we can sign in a user using this sign in form. In this section, I want us to sign in a user using our sign in form, and our sign in action creator will be so similar to our sign up action creator. So all I'll do is that I'll copy this action creator and duplicate it at the bottom using Alt Shift and the bottom arrow. So now right here I can create some spacing and customize this action creator to fit our sign-in action. So first things first is to rename this action creator to sign in, and then right here we'll be getting creds or credentials, that is email and password. I'll simply call it creds, and then we can return dispatch, use Axios to perform a post request, and the endpoint in this case is sign in, not sign up. And then we pass creds to the body of the request, and this now can be received by the backend API, and the user will be signed into the system. What we get back is an auth token, which is a JWT token, and we simply set this token to our local storage or save it to our local storage. The key is token, the token data is token.data, or the token itself is token.data. And then we perform a dispatch of an action. Type will be sign in, and we also pass a token which will be in token.data, and we can access this from our reducers and update the state accordingly. And then right here we catch any error, we log an error to the console, and also toast the error as a message. Now this is all we need to do for the sign in. It's just so similar to our sign up. All we need to do is to change the path, the name, and what we dispatch right here. Now we can go to our auth reducer and perform a check of this action, which is sign in. Now in our auth reducer, all we need to do is to add this case right here. I'll simply say case sign in and a full colon. If I save that, this should be automatically formatted, and if it's not, I can manually format it. So this case sign in will also be similar to our sign up. This is what will happen. We'll toast a welcome message, and then we'll decode the user from the action.token, and then we'll add the user to the state. So you can see sign up, sign in, and user loaded all are doing the same thing here. All the functionality or the logic is the same. Now all we need to do is to dispatch our sign in action creator from our front end. So we will go to the auth folder and go to the sign in component. So from here I'll import everything we need to make use of our sign in action creator, or to dispatch our sign in action creator. So first of all, in this component we may need to use the state. So I'll say use state. I import use state from React, and then we'll make use of use dispatch and use selector. So I will import use dispatch and also use selector, and all this will be coming from React Redux. So use dispatch will help us to dispatch the sign in action creator, and then use selector will help us to select a certain piece of state from our Redux store, and then the use state will help us to get our form values, and we can then dispatch them. Now the other thing that we will need is the actual action creator, so we can also import it here. Which is sign in, and this will be coming from our auth actions. One level up, another level up, I access the store, I access actions, and then auth actions. So we have imported everything we need, and we just need to make use of them. So inside our sign in component, before our return statement, we can include the default state right here. So I'll say const, we will have creds and set creds. So set creds will simply update our creds state, and then this will be equal to use state. I invoke it and pass some default state. For our sign-in, we expect a user to have an email, so we can default it to an empty string, and we also expect the user to have a password, so I default it to an empty string. Now we can update our creds.email and creds.password from our form when we type something in our form. So right here, first of all, we will have a value prop, which will be equal to creds.email. And then to update this value, we will have an onChange event. So this will be equal to right here we pass an arrow function which will accept event, and then we can make use of set creds to update the creds. So I'll say set creds, I invoke it, and then in here I'll spread the creds using the spread operator, and then all we need to update is the email, which will now be equal to e.target dot value. Okay, I think this is correct. So we need to do the same for our password. I'll just copy this and paste it right here. So this will be creds.password, and then for our set creds, we'll accept an event, spread the creds, but this time we'll only update the password. So now we are correctly updating the values for email and password, and when we submit the form, we will fire an onSubmit event. So right here I'll say onSubmit, which will be equal to a helper method. I'll call it _submit, and now we can create this helper method. I think I messed up something. Oh yeah, it's okay. If I save that, I think it should be automatically formatted. So we have an onSubmit, _submit, and we can create this _submit just before our return statement. So right here I'll say const _submit, which will be equal to an arrow function. It will accept an event, and we can prevent the default action for submitting a form. So e.prevent default, this will prevent the page from refreshing whenever we submit the form, just like that, and I invoke it e.prevent default. And then right here is where we can dispatch our action creator when we are submitting the form, and we need to load the use dispatch hook. So I'll say const dispatch will be equal to use dispatch, and I make sure that I invoke that. So right here I can simply say dispatch, I invoke it, I call signing, and I invoke it and pass the creds. So this creds is this one, which will have our values from the state. And then after that, I simply want to clear the form values, because our form values depends on the value of the state. So if we create the state, we simply create the form values. So right here I'll say set grades. I invoke it and pass the email to be an empty array. I also pass password to be an empty array. Okay, now at this point we should successfully log in the user, but I also want to redirect the user to the home page in case an auth ID exists, like we did with our sign up form. So what I'll do is that I'll load the auth state right here. So I'll say const auth will be equal to use selector. We had imported use selector area from React Redux. I invoke use selector. So what we get here is the state, and we will directly return state.auth. Now we have the auth, and all we need is to perform a check. So right here I'll say if auth dot underscore id exists, all we need to do is to return the redirect component. So right here I'll say redirect, and then we have a tool which is a prop, and we pass this path, which is the home page where we have the list of our to-dos. And then now we can cross our redirect component, and yeah, this way. Also make sure that it was not added here. I saw that that behavior. Okay, you can see it was added here, but we don't want it here. I saw this behavior when working with our sign up, so make sure it's not there. And we need to import this redirect component from React Router DOM. So at the very top, let's import redirect, and this will be coming from React Router DOM, just like that. So right now we should be able to log in and redirect the user to the home page. And I think we can also log auth to the console. Maybe what we can do, so that we also see the application state, is to come to our app.js component and log the state to the console from here, or rather from our navbar, because the navbar is in every component, like it's a shared component. That's what I meant. I think from here we can import use selector, so that we also see our application state use selector. Okay, and this will be from React Redux. React Redux. Now we can make use of use selector right here, or I'll do is that I'll say const state will be equal to use selector, and I invoke this. What we get is the state, and we directly return this state. Oops, this is so bad now. State, we directly return the state, and we can log this state to the console. Console.log state. So at this point now we should also be able to see our application state in any component, because our navbar is kind of shared. Now I run the application and we can test whether everything works. So at the moment we don't have any token at our local storage. So let's go to sign in and try to sign in the user. So I'll say chow2, gmail.com. I'm not sure whether I remember the password, but let's try. I'll click sign in, and there we go. We are successfully being redirected to the to-do home page, and then we have a welcome message, and a token was added at our local storage. So if we go to console, right here we log the state to the console, so we can see we have the state, and when we check our auth state, we have the email, we have the name, token, and an ID. If I try to go to sign up, I can't because I am logged in. If I try to go to sign in, I can't because I am logged in. So we are successfully signing up a user, signing in a user, and also loading a user from the application state. So loading a user is important because now when I refresh the page, because we already have a token at our local storage, will still be signed in. Okay, so yeah, that's perfect. Now in the next section we'll see how we can sign out a user. In this section I want us to handle sign out, and if I come to the navbar component where we have our sign out button, I can see that we had started to implement the sign out functionality. So just right here where we have our sign out button, we had added an on click event where if you click that button, this handle sign out method is called, and then in the sign out method, this is where we will dispatch an action creator for signing out a user, and then right here we push the user to the sign in route. So to complete this functionality, we can import use dispatch and also an action creator from our auth actions. So we haven't created the action creator yet, but since we know where it will be, we can still import it, and right here I'll say use dispatch, and then right here we can make an import of our action creator, and note that we haven't created this action creator yet, but we will call it sign out, and it will be coming from our auth actions. So I go to the store, I access the actions, and then I access the auth actions, just like that, and then we can initialize use dispatch right here. So I'll say const dispatch will be equal to use dispatch. I invoke that, and then right here is where we will dispatch our action creator. So dispatch, I invoke it, and then sign out. I also invoke this, and this time round we are not passing any parameter to our sign out action creator. So let's go ahead and create this sign out action creator. So I'll go to the auth actions, and then we can create it at the bottom here. So I'll create the sign out action creator, export const sign out. This will be an arrow function, and then we'll return a function with the help of ReduxDunk, and this function will have access to dispatch so that we can dispatch our actions, and then in here we can dispatch an action of type sign out. So this is all we need to do in this particular action creator. All you are dispatching is an action of type sign out, and this is it. This is all we need to do for our sign out action creator. It's an arrow function which have access to dispatch, and then we dispatch an action of type sign out. Now we can go to our reducer where the magic of signing out a user will happen. So after our case here, now we will include a new case because this is now a different implementation. I'll say case sign out, so this is supposed to be underscore sign out and then a full colon, and below here to sign out a user, the first thing that we need to do is to remove the token from the local storage. So right here I'll simply say local storage dot remove item, and then I pass in the key for our item, which is token. So this will remove that token from the local storage, and then we can toast a message. So all I'll do is that I'll copy this one and paste it here, but we can change the message to goodbye because now you are logging out. We position it at the bottom right, and then after this we need to clear our state. Okay, so in our state we need to set everything to null, even the token itself. So all I'll do is that I'll say return an object which will have these properties. So it will have a token, name, email, ID. I'll copy that to make my work easier, paste it here, and the token will also be null now that we have removed it from the local storage. So I'll save that and it will be properly formatted. So yeah, this is it. This is where now we are signing out a user. When we click the button from our navbar, we will dispatch this action creator sign out, and then this sign out will dispatch an action of type sign out, and then this action we can check it here where we remove the token from the local storage, we toast a message, and we clear the state. So this way the user should be successfully signed out. Now I want to note out that since we are not performing a massive functionality here, we can directly dispatch an action just in our navbar. But just to follow our trend where we create action creators right here, and then we use auth reducer to update the state, we can do it this way for consistency. Now let's test the application and see whether our sign out functionality works. So now currently we are logged in. If I expand the state here, you'll see we have a token at our state, an email, name, and ID. And when I check the application here, we also have a token at our local storage. Now let's see if our sign out functionality works. So I'll click sign out, and you'll see that this token have been removed from local storage. And when I come to the state, so I'll come to the console, which is here. I expand this. Now you'll see at our auth we are clearing the state, then the ID, token, name, email, and we are redirected to the sign in component. So now we can sign up, we can sign in, and when we come to our to-do app right here, we can also be able to access our to-dos at the moment, but we'll perform conditional rendering later on, and also redirecting the users if they are not signed in. But in the next section, I want us to protect our API endpoints, since now we have authentication such that only the logged in users can be able to delete a to-do, add a new to-do, and perform all those actions. So right here, right now I can add a new to-do even if I am not logged in, okay? And that to-do is appearing here. I can mark a to-do as done. I can edit a to-do, and I want this functionality to only remain to authenticated users. So in the next section, we'll protect our API endpoint so that only authenticated users can perform these actions. And then we'll perform conditional rendering, where we can hide some buttons here, show the correct name of the logged in user, and also make sure that we can't access our to-dos if we are not logged in, okay? In this section, we are going to protect our API endpoints, and we had created this middleware function at our backend, which will help us to check whether our user requests have a valid token, and if the token is valid, then we'll go ahead and allow the user to access our to-dos API endpoint. So how this function works is that it expects our request to have a header, and at our header we are expected to have a key called XAuth token, which will contain our JWT token. And then if the token does not exist, we return not authorized to the user. And if the token exists, then we will verify the token using JWT verify, where we pass the token here and also the secret key from our environment variable as the second parameter. And what we get back is the decoded or the payload of that token, and it will contain properties of our user, that is the username, the ID, and also the email. So we add the user to our request, so that now we can access this user from our to-dos APIs, and we can perform further authorization. So to start with, we are going to create a function which will allow us to set this XAuth token together with a valid token of the logged in user. So I'll go back to my frontend folder here, and then inside the API folder we will access this index.js file. Right here we were exporting a URL which targets our API endpoints, and we'll also export a function which will help us to set the headers of our request. So right here I'll say export const set headers, and this will be an arrow function. And then right here I'll say const header will be equal to an object, and inside this object now we can set the headers with a small cap. So this is a property inside this object called headers. I use a full colon, and then we can set a key and a value. The key will be this one, XAuth token. I'll just copy that and then paste it here. I use a full colon, and then the key, it will be our auth token, and we'll get this auth token from the local storage. So I'll say local storage dot get item, and inside here we can pass the key of the item we are getting, which is token. So now when we call this function, we should return this header, which will contain our XAuth token, and the XAuth token will contain a token from our local storage. So right here we need to have a return statement, and I'll simply say header. Now we can access these set headers from our to-do actions where we are performing requests and set the necessary headers. So right here we will import URL from the API, and also we will import set headers. And when performing each request to our to-dos API, we'll need to pass this set headers function, and it will set our headers to contain our XAuth token. So to start with, we can start with the get to-dos action creator. This is where we are accessing the API endpoint as the first parameter, and then the second parameter we will call set headers. I invoke that, and now this will set our headers to be exactly this one, an object which have a property called headers, and then inside that property we have another property which is a key which contains our token. So just to mention, you can pass this object directly to our get method here as the second parameter, but for simplicity we are using a function so that we can call this function from each of our requests to avoid this repetition. Okay, so we'll go ahead and set headers for our add to do. So right here I can include a comma, and we set the headers as the third parameter. I invoke this one. So for adding a new to do, we are expected to have a URL and then the body of the request, and then this is the third parameter where we are supposed to set our headers. For our get, we only have two parameters, the URL, and then the second parameter is our headers. We don't have a body of the request right here. Now for adding a new to do, we can continue and add an author when adding a new to do, so that this is now complete, such that when we add a new to do, we also get to know the author of that to do and also the UID of the person who created that to do. So what I'll do is that I'll use an object here, and then I'll spread the properties of new to do, and the second parameter here will be author, and the other one will be UID, and we can get this directly from our state. So we have access to get state, and before we perform axios.post, we can get our author and also the UID. So right here I'll say const author will be equal to get state. I invoke this, we say .auth .name. So remember in our state we have the auth state and also the to-dos state. Now we are getting the name of the author, and then we can also get the UID of the author. So I'll set the UID to be equal to get state. I invoke this, and then we say .auth ._ID, and this is now the user ID, and we attach the author and the UID to our to do, so that now it will have the to do's properties and also the person who created that to do. And we are also setting the headers so that we send the token at our backend. Now let's go ahead to our update to do. So right here we will have the URL, and then we will have the body of the request, and now we can have the headers of the request by simply saying set headers. I invoke that, and then we can go to our delete or rather check to do's. So this is supposed to have the first parameter is the URL, and then the second parameter is supposed to be the body of the request. But since we are not sending anything to the body, so this is just an empty object as a placeholder. And then the third parameter is set headers, and we invoke it to set our headers. And lastly, we have delete, which will have the first parameter as the URL and the second parameter as the headers of the request. So we'll just invoke our set headers function. Now for each of our to-dos requests, we are sending headers to the backend, and when we receive these headers, which is this one, it will have this key XAuth token, and we will perform a check whether this XAuth token exists. If it's null, we'll send back not authorized. Else, we'll perform some verification here and add a user to our request. Okay, so in our request we'll have user, and we can access this user from our to-dos APIs. So I'll go to the to-dos API right here, and we need to uncomment this one. So how we are going to protect our routes is passing this middleware function. So we are getting, this is the middleware function, this one, where we are checking whether we have a valid token. So we'll send this one as the second parameter. After our path, we include auth and then a comma, and then the next in our middleware function, this one here, will pass functionality to our async function here, which will get our to-dos from the backend. So when we pass this auth, the user must be authenticated in order to get the to-dos. So if the user is not authenticated, we will either get not authorized or invalid token from our middleware function. Okay, so from our to-dos API, we should pass this auth as the second parameter for each of these requests. But for further authorization, we can make it in such a way that a user only get the to-dos that he or she added. So we can perform a filter, since in our auth here, it gave us access to the user via our request. So what we can do is to filter our to-dos just like this. So I'll say const filtered to-dos will be equal to, we take this to-dos array, which is the entire array. So I'll say to-dos dot filter. I invoke this, and in here we will get each to do at a time, and we will perform a check. So we will say if to do dot uid is equal to request dot user dot underscore id, then we will return that to do. If to do dot uid is equal to request dot user dot underscore id, we will return that to do, and it will be added in our filtered to dos array. So remember, this to do dot uid is coming because we added a uid in our to do actions, just right here. This is why we added the uid. And then for request.user.underscore-id is coming from our middleware function, where we verified the user and added the user to our request. Okay, so now we can do request.user and then access a property of the user, which is ._id. So this is what is happening there. And then right here, instead of sending all the to-dos to the user, we can send only the filtered to-dos. So right here, I'll say filtered to-dos. So now a user can only get to-dos that he or she added, and not other users to-dos. Okay, now this is for get. Let's go ahead to our post. So right here we need to pass auth as the second parameter, and this is our middleware function which checks whether our headers have a valid auth token. And right here we are adding the author, the UID at our new to do. So we were getting it from request.body, and this is all we need to do for adding a new to do. We only need to pass auth, we don't need to do anything else. So we can go to the next one, which is editing a to do. So we need to pass auth right here, and then after we perform this check whether a to do exists or not, we can also perform a check whether this is a valid user or not a valid user who is making the request. Okay, so we want users to only edit to dos that they added in the database and not other people's to dos. So what I'll say is that if to do dot uid, so right here we have checked the to do is exists. If it exists, then we can say to do dot uid. If to do dot uid is not equal to, we have a user in our request, is not equal to request dot user dot underscore id, then what we will do is that we will return, we will say res dot status, and the status code for this one will be 41. So right here I'll say 41, which means not authorized, and then we can send this message dot send. I invoke it and I'll say to do update failed, and at the end here maybe I can minimize this one. I can also tell them it's because they are not authorized to edit that to do, so not authorized, and maybe I can include 3 dots. I'll save this to properly format this code, yeah, that way. So this is for our edit. We fetch the to do right here. If the to do exists, we'll proceed to this line. We do a to do, I missed the spelling here, to do dot uid. If it's not equal to request dot user dot underscore id, now this is the person making the request or the currently logged in user, then we'll tell the user that oops, to do update failed, not authorized, and the code is 41. And then now we can do the same for our delete. Actually, I think I'll just copy this, and then for this was for put request. Okay, we also have a patch request. I'll include auth, which is our middleware function for checking the headers. Then we check if the to do exists. If the to do exists, then we'll perform this check, the same as the above. Okay, so only the message will change, maybe to do check stroke uncheck failed, not authorized, and then we can go to our delete. I pass auth here. We check if the to do exists. If it exists, then we also perform this check, and we'll change the message to do deletion failed. Not authorized. Okay, so now we are correctly protecting these routes. First of all, if you are not authenticated, you won't be able to delete a to do. Then if you are not authorized to delete that to do, you won't be able to actually delete it. And we are doing this for these other API endpoints for our to do. And now the only thing that remains is to test whether our application works. Okay, just to take you through the thought process of what we have done. First of all, we started by creating a set headers function, which includes a key in our headers called xauth token, and we set the token to be from our local storage. And then with every request, we are setting the headers for each of these requests. So when we make a request, what will happen is that for example, if we are getting a to-do, we'll get to this path, and then this is the function that will be executed first. So we'll go to auth.js, check whether our request have a header, and inside the header we have xauth token. If the token does not exist, we'll tell the user, oops, you are not authorized. Else we will verify the token and include a user to our request. Else we'll say invalid token. So if this succeeds, we pass functionality to the next middleware function, which is our function here, right here. So when we get to this point now in our request, we will have a user, and we can do something like request.user._id, and we can do a filter for these to-dos, where we get to-dos which we ourselves added and not other people's to-dos. And then for post, we only need to check whether the user is authenticated to post a new to-do, but we'll also add an author and a UID to that to-do. And then for put, we check whether the user is authenticated, and then we also check whether they are the one who created that particular to-do, so that they can actually edit it. The same happens for patch, and the same happens for delete. Now there is one last thing that we need to do. We need to go to our to-dos folder here, and then add to-do component. And when we update a to-do, we need to include all the properties that are required. We need to include a valid author, the currently logged in user, and also a UID. So I replace this line with these two lines, okay, where we have the author as to-do.author and UID as to-do.UID, and this will properly update a to-do. Now we can go ahead and test if everything works. So I'll go back to the browser here, and at the moment you'll see that we can't get our to-dos because we are not logged in. If I try to refresh this one, you'll see that we are still getting an error, and if I expand this, you'll see that at our auth everything is null. And when I check the application here, we don't have a token, okay. So if we try to add a new to-do when we don't have a token and submit, you'll see that we are getting an invalid token, and we can't actually add a to-do. So we are correctly protecting our API endpoints, and to confirm this, we can sign in as a user, enter a valid password, sign in. And once we are signed in, we can now add a new to-do, and you can see it was added here. We can try to add another one, and we can mark the to-do as done. We can edit it, and also we can be able to delete a to-do. As long as we are logged in, we can be able to perform all these actions, okay. So if I sign out, we will be redirected to the sign in component. If I go to the to-do right here, for some reason we still have this in our state, but when we try to mark it as done, you can see invalid token. If we try to edit it, we can't be able to edit it. If I try to delete, also we can't delete. And if I refresh this page, you'll see that we can't get that to do from the backend. So right now we are correctly protecting our API endpoints, and in the next video I want us to perform some conditional rendering such that if you are not logged in, you cannot access our home page, so you won't be able to see a sign-in form, you won't be able to see the to-dos, and also you won't be able to see some of these buttons. So if you are not logged in, you'll only see sign in and sign up, you won't see sign out. Else if you are logged in, you will see sign out and you will not see sign in and sign up. And also we'll update the name right here. In this section I want us to perform some conditional rendering, and we'll go to the todos.jsx component, and this was the parent component for our add to do component and for our list to do's component. So we don't want to see these components if we are not logged in. Okay, so we must be logged in for us to see our to-dos. So I'll import use selector from React Redux, and also the redirect component from our React Router DOM. So right here I'll say import redirect, and this is from React Router DOM. And then I'll import use dispatch, not use dispatch, use selector, from React Redux, and then we can use redirect and use selector to redirect a user. So first thing we will do is to load our auth from state. So right here I'll say const auth will be equal to use selector. I invoke this. What we get is the state, and we can return the auth state by saying state dot auth. And now before our return statement, we can perform a check if we don't have an auth dot underscore id. We should redirect the user to the sign in page. Okay, so right here I'll say return the redirect component. We use the to plop, and we set it to be equal to stroke signing, and then right here I cross our redirect, and this should not be here. So just like that, we are getting auth from the state. If there is no an ID in our auth, that means that the user has not logged in, and therefore we redirect them to the sign in page. Else our components here will be returned. So now let's go to the navbar component, and we want to hide some things depending on whether a user is logged in or not. So right here I will load a user from the state. I'll just duplicate this one, and then instead of returning the state here, I return state.auth, and I can get auth right here, or the user, and then I can use this auth to perform some conditional rendering depending on whether a user is logged in or not. So we want to display this message logged in as that user, and also we want to display sign out if the user is logged in. So we can display the correct name here by using the curly brackets and then using auth dot name. So this is the name of the currently logged in user, and then I can use these curly brackets and perform a check. If of ._id exists, that means that the user is logged in, and therefore we should display these two, this message and the sign out button. So I'll use a question mark and these brackets and include these two components in here. Else we should display the sign in and the sign up buttons. So right here I should use a full colon and then add brackets and display these two buttons. So I'll cut that and include it here. So this should be wrapped in a single element. So I'll make use of React fragments, which is an opening and a closing tag, and move them in those two elements. And the same should happen for these ones. So where we are performing a check brackets, we should have these two. So these are just React fragments, and then we move the typography and the sign out button in our React fragment. So I'll save this to correctly format it, and this is what is happening. If we have an ID, it means that we are logged in, and therefore we'll display this message and then the sign out button. Else we'll display the sign in and the sign up button. Now we can test our application. So now our application has loaded, and you can see we are not seeing the sign out button and the message that we were seeing here. So we can try and log in. We enter a password. I sign in, and once we are logged in, you can see we are displaying the name and also the sign out button, but we can see the sign in and the sign up button. So if I try to sign out and try to access our to-dos here, we can't because we are already logged out. So at this point, I think we have achieved our goal of creating a to-do app with authentication and performing all the CRUD operations in our application. And in the next video, we'll see how we can deploy our application so that you can access it online. Hey, what's up guys? So in this video, we are going to deploy our Node.js application to Heroku. So Heroku is a cloud platform which supports several languages, and these are the languages which are supported by Heroku. So if you have an application written in any of these languages, you can deploy your application to Heroku. We are most interested in Node.js. So the first step is to visit heroku.com, and then you can create an account if you don't have one by clicking sign up here. If you have an account, you can just log in, and this is what I am going to do. I am going to log into my account using an email and a password. Once you log in, the first step is to create a new application. So I'll use this button right here and then click on create new app. Give your app a name, node-to-do-app, and you'll see that this name is already taken and not available. So what I like to do is to prefix the name using my own name. So I'll say chow-node-to-do-app, and this is now available. Choose a region. I'll go with the default and then create app. Once the app is created, you'll be redirected to instructions on how you can deploy your app. And we have several deployment methods. We have Heroku Git, GitHub, and then container registry. In this video, we are going to stick to Heroku Git. And to use Heroku Git, we need to make use of Heroku CLI. So the next step is to install Heroku CLI. I have already installed Heroku CLI, but for you, you need to click on this link. Let me open it on a new tab. And you land a page just like this one. Once you scroll at the bottom here, you'll see instructions on how to install on different OS. So make sure you install Heroku CLI, and then the other step is to follow these instructions, and these are a few instructions, so it will take us a few minutes to deploy our app. So I'll go to my application here where I have my man application, and then open the backend. So the backend is what we want to deploy on Heroku, and I'll open this path on command prompt. I'll type cmd right here, hit enter, and this will open my command prompt on that particular path or directory. So I can zoom in a little bit so that you clearly see what I am doing. So right here, the first thing that we can do is to check whether Heroku CLI is installed in our machines by using this command, Heroku -v. So right here we get the version of Heroku CLI that we are using. If you don't get a version and get an error, you'll know that Heroku CLI is not installed in your machine and you need to install it. The next step I'll do is to initialize a Git repository using this command, git init. So this will initialize an empty Git repository, and then I can open my backend code on Visual Studio Code using this command, code space and a period. This should open my code on Visual Studio Code. And here is our node application. So index.js is the root of our application. And the first thing that I want us to do is to ignore these node modules. So we don't want to push node modules to Heroku because Heroku will automatically install the necessary dependencies using our package .json. So what I'll do, I'll come at the root of the app and create a new file. And this file is called git.gitignore, and then hit enter. So once this file is created, we can use it to ignore the files or directories that we don't want to deploy to Heroku, and in this case we want to ignore our node modules. So right here I'll use a slash and then include node_modules. Now the next step is to add the necessary files to the staging area. So I'll come back to the command prompt here. If I say git status, you'll see that all these files are untracked and we need to add them to the staging area. And right here you should not see node modules. If you see node modules, something is wrong, go and ignore it properly. So right here, I'll add these files to the staging area. So I'll say git add and then a star, meaning all of these files, and then hit enter. And then right here, if I say git status, you will see that all of these files were added to the staging area, and now we can commit these changes using git commit and then -m, and I enter a message. Maybe I can say node app and then hit enter. Now the only thing that remains is to push these files to Heroku. So the next step that I'll take here is to log into Heroku. So I'll say Heroku login, hit enter, and you'll see place any key to open up the browser to log in or Q to exit. So I'll place any key to log in, and this should open the browser. So I have my browser opened here, and you only need to click login here, and now you can see you can close this page and return to Heroku CLI. It should now be logged in. So if I come back here, you can see now I am logged in as Chao Charles, and the next thing that we need to do is to add our remote repository to our local repository here. So I'll go back to where we had instructions for deploying. We have done the login, we created a new repository. Now we need to do this, okay, to add this remote repo to our local repository. So I'll copy this command, Heroku git /remote -a, and then the name of the application, and then come back to my command prompt and paste it here, hit enter, and now this have created a connection between our local repository and the remote repository. So if I come right here, you'll see that we did this, okay, we added the files, we committed the files, and only this last step remains. But before we push the files, I have remembered something that we have not done, and that is specifying a command to start our application while it's deployed to Heroku. So if I come to my app here, you can come to package.json file, and we need to write a script here. So I can expand this. So one way is to write a script here, a start script. So you can say start, and then you specify the command here. The command will be node, and then the root of our application is index.js, and I should include a comma and spell this one correctly. So we need to include this command at the scripts so that Heroku knows which file and which command to run, so that our application can run correctly. So this is one way of doing this. The other way is to create what we call a block file, and that is what I'll stick to. So I'll just remove this one. I just wanted to show you an alternative. So if I come right here, so this is the documentation of the block file. If I scroll at the bottom, you'll see that a block file is simply a text file called block file without the file extension. So it's not written as procfile.txt, rather it's written only as procfile. So a procfile have this format where we have the process type and then the command, and the process type can be web, worker, and then agent worker, clock, and so on. So the process type in our case will be web. So let's create this block file, and then I'll show you the command that we need to include there. So right here, I'll add a new file. Okay, I need to remove this because we are not using it. So at the root, I'll create a new file, call it block file, starting with a capital letter and then block file. We don't have any extension, so this is the block file. And then right here, the process type is web, and then full colon, and then the command that we learn is node index.js, and you can see this is the exact command that we had included in package.json. Now we need to add this file to the staging area and commit it so that it can also be deployed to Heroku. So right here, I'll say git add all files, And then if I say git status, you can see this new file is the only one that was added to the staging area. I'll say git commit, and then -m, and what I'll say here is added a block file. Hit enter, and now the only thing that remains is to push our application to Heroku. So if I come here, you'll see that we have this command git push Heroku master. So I'll copy that command and then I'll include it here. Hit enter. So you can see now it's deploying, it's installing node modules. Proc file have been identified and it's web. And now our application have been deployed. So if I come back to our account here, I scroll at the top and then go to overview. You'll see just now we have deployed the app and build succeeded. So you can open the app right here, open app, and you'll see this welcome message, welcome to our Todoist API. And this message is the one that we included in our index.js file just right here at the root. So if we try to access our Todoist, we should get an error of not authorized because we are protecting our Todoist API. So if I come here and then add that extension right here for our Todoist, hit enter, you'll see not authorized. So our application have been successfully been deployed, and you can customize the domain name at our settings. If you don't want to use this herokuapp.com domain name, you can come to settings. When you scroll at the bottom here, you can set SSL certificates, and then we have somewhere where you can add a domain name. So now we have successfully deployed our Node.js app on Heroku, and in the next video I'll show you how to deploy a React app for free on Netlify. Thank you for watching, and also remember to subscribe to my channel. Hey, what's up guys? So in this video we are going to deploy our React app on Netlify, and we are going to make use of Netlify and also GitHub. So what we will do is that we will push our code to GitHub, and then we'll connect Netlify to GitHub, and Netlify will build the app from GitHub, and the app will be deployed. So the first thing that we need to do is to create a new GitHub repository. So if you don't have a GitHub account, you can go to github.com and create a new account, and then you can go to repositories, and in repositories you should see a new button to create a new repository. So I'll click on new, and then right here you can enter the name of the repository. I'll call it React app, and then maybe I can also include React-to-do app, and then you can either make it public or private. And then with create React app, these files, the readme file and the .gitignore files, are automatically added, so I won't need to add them again. So I'll simply create the repository. Now right here we have instructions on how we can connect our local repository and the GitHub repository and push the local code to our GitHub repository. But before we do all this, I want us to make some changes to our React code, and then we'll come back here and follow these instructions. Okay, So I'll go to where I have my Matstack application, and we are interested in front end. So in the last video we deployed the backend Node.js app to Heroku, so you can check that one out if you haven't seen it already. And now I want to go to the front end. I open this with command prompt by typing cmd at the path here, and this will open that directory to command prompt. So cmd, hit enter. So this have opened that path on command prompt, and I can zoom so that you clearly see what I'm doing. I think that is big enough. Maybe resize the window and reposition it here. So I'll open my front-end code on Visual Studio Code. So code space and a period, hit enter, and that should open that code on Visual Studio Code. So the code have been opened on Visual Studio Code, and the file that I am interested in is in API and then index.js. So we need to change this URL. This URL was for the localhost, and since we already deployed our backend in the previous video, we can change this URL to point at the backend that is available in Heroku. So what I'll do, I will duplicate this using Alt Shift and the bottom arrow, and then I'll comment the first line just like that. And then when I come to Heroku where we deployed our application, I can open the app using this button. So I'll click open app, and right here we will get the URL of our backend that is available on Heroku. So we need to copy this path. I'll use Ctrl C to copy the path, and then I'll go back to Visual Studio Code, and I need to replace HTTP localhost 5000 up to this point with that link that we copied from the browser. Now if I can minimize this one, you'll see now this is the path. So we have double slash here. I'll remove one of them. So now this is the path for our endpoint. Okay, now the second thing that we are going to do is to add a new file in our public folder, and this file is called _redirects. And the reason we are adding this file is because we are using React Router in our application, and this redirects will help us to point all the routes to index.html file. Since in our application we only have one index.html file, it's a single page application. Okay, so right here I'll add a new file, _redirects. I hit enter, and then in this file I'll include this command, a slash and then a star. So this means all paths or routes will be redirected to index, so a slash index.html, and then we'll have a status code of 200. So this is all you need to do in this file. So what will happen is that when we build our application, this redirect will be available at the root of the build. So that's why we added it at the public folder. Now the last thing that you can confirm is that we are doing a git ignore of our node modules at this file .git ignore. Okay, and now at this point we can push our code to GitHub. So I'll come back to the command prompt here. Now right here we need to make sure that we have a Git repository. So I run git init. In React it is usually automatically initialized, but I deleted it to show you how to create a Git repository, git init. So this will create an empty Git repository, but for you, you might not need to do that. Okay, now the next step is to add all the files to the staging area. So if I perform a git status, you'll see that we have all these files which are not yet committed, and all you need to make sure is that we don't have node modules here. And the next step is to learn git add and then a star to mean all the files. We add them to the staging area, and then after this we'll learn this command git commit to commit our changes, -m, and then double quotes, and right here I can enter a message of what we changed. In this case I'll just say React app, enter, and now we have committed the changes. The next step, we need to link our local repository to our GitHub repository. So if I come to these instructions, you can see we have already done this, git init, git add, and also we have committed the changes. Now we can create a branch, a main branch right here. So I'll copy that, paste it here, press enter, and then I can copy this command for adding our GitHub repository to our local repository. So right here I'll git remote add origin, and then I'll push the changes to the main branch in GitHub. So I'll copy that and then paste it here and press enter. So you might be asked to enter a password when you perform this git remote add. So make sure you enter the password and also the email if needed, so that you log into GitHub and it will allow you to do this. Now my code have been pushed to GitHub. Now I can come here and refresh this page, and we should see something different. And now here we have our files which are available in GitHub, and you can see the commit message is React app. Now that we have the application available in GitHub, we can go to Netlify, and the first step that we need to do is to log in. So if you don't have an account, you can just sign up for an account, but in my case I'll just log into Netlify. Now I am logged in to Netlify, and I'll create a new site using Git. So new site from Git, you should see this button somewhere even if you don't have any projects. So new site from Git, and then right here you can use Bitbucket, GitLab, or GitHub. In this case we have used GitHub. So this will ask us to either log in or to do something like that, so that to authorize the app to GitHub. Mine was automatically logged in because I created an account in Netlify using GitHub. Now right here I can search for that repository. I can say React. I search that, and then right here we should see React to do app, which is this one. And then did I select it? For some reason I don't know why I was pushed back here. I'll say GitHub again. Search for React. I don't know why that happened, but let's see. And then what I want is this one. Maybe I need to click on this arrow, I don't know. Yeah, now we are here. So you'll get to the third step here, and then you'll select the branch that you want to deploy your application. In this case we only have one branch, main branch. If you want to deploy it from another branch, you can select that branch. So at the bottom here we have the command for building our app, which is npm learn build, and the directory that will be published is the build folder. Now right here all you need to do is to hit deploy. Now this will take some time to deploy the site, and once it's deployed you can also set up a custom domain name here and perform some other setup. Now as the site deploys, we can change the name of our site here using these site settings, and then right here we can change site name. So I'll change this to something simple, maybe chow -react to do -app. I think that is more readable. Save, and now the name will be changed. So if I can come to this app now, we are still deploying, and I'll wait for it to complete. So the site have been deployed, and as I said before, you can set up a custom domain name if you want, but now it's accessible through this link. So I'll click the link, and you can see it's prefixed with the name of the app that we included here. And now here we are in our application. I'll try to log in. I'm not sure whether I'll remember the email and the password, but let's see. So then I enter the password, I click enter, and perfect, we are now being logged in right here, and you can see we were correctly redirected to this home page because of that redirect file that we added, and we can be able to access our Node app, which is on the cloud. You can see that we don't have any local server running. It's only this command line that I have, no local server running. This is directly accessing our Heroku backend. I can mark this as done. I can edit new to-dos. I can delete. And when I hit F12 here, we can be able to see the console. When I come to the application here, you'll see at our local storage here, we have a JWT token, and this is the domain for the local storage. So we are successfully deploying our React app, and we successfully deployed our backend, and this marks the end of this entire series where we were creating a ManStack application, front end being React and Redux, backend being Node.js, and we also did all the cloud operation and authentication, and now we have successfully deployed the application. So thank you guys for watching the entire series. If you haven't watched the entire series, I'll make sure that I leave a link at the comment section below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.